Money. A simple word, and yet it carries so much weight. A single coin resting in your hand can feel heavier than its size allows, as though it carries with it the invisible pressures of survival, ambition, and fear. A glowing number on a bank screen can lift your heart or sink it, though it is nothing more than pixels arranged in a temporary dance of light. But what if we pause here, in this quiet moment, and ask a question we rarely allow ourselves to ask? What is money, really? Why do these pieces of paper, or strings of numbers, hold such sway over our lives? And more than that, why is money so often contradictory, paradoxical, and strange? That is what we will explore tonight. The paradoxes of money, the ways it is both real and unreal, both everything and nothing, both liberating and imprisoning. By the time you drift into sleep, I hope you will find yourself not just more relaxed, but perhaps also gently unsettled, aware of the invisible threads that tie your life to this strange shared illusion we call money. A paradox is something that appears self-contradictory, but upon closer examination, reveals a deeper truth. Money, perhaps more than any other invention, is filled with paradoxes. Think of it this way. Money can buy almost anything, yet it has no value of its own. A dollar bill is just paper, a coin just metal, and yet their meaning extends far beyond their material form. Money is both an object and a belief, both a tool and a prison. History shows us this duality again and again. In ancient times, salt was used as money, giving us the very word salary. Later, gold glittered as the eternal standard of wealth, until we replaced it with paper, and then replaced paper with numbers glowing silently in the digital realm. At each step, the thing itself mattered less than the story we told about it. And this is where paradoxes bloom. Money feels solid, but it is fragile. It feels personal, but it is collective. It feels eternal, but its value can vanish in an instant. Each paradox forces us to reconsider not just money, but the very foundations of how we live, trade, and dream. If money is paradoxical, what does that mean for us? It means that much of what we chase in life may not be as real as it feels. We work for money, stress over it, even measure our worth against it, without ever questioning the invisible logic beneath. If money is an illusion, then how much of our lives are lived inside that illusion? And yet, illusions can be powerful. A flag is just fabric, yet it can inspire loyalty strong enough to send people into battle. A story is just words, yet it can shape entire civilizations. Money, like these, is fiction that has stepped out of the imagination and into the world, shaping reality as firmly as mountains or rivers. The paradoxes of money ask us to confront uncomfortable truths. They whisper questions into the quiet. Do we own money, or does it own us? Is scarcity real or invented? Can desire ever be satisfied? What happens when the story of money changes or ends? Take a breath here. Let these questions float in your mind without rushing to answer them. To begin unraveling these paradoxes, we must start at the very heart of the illusion, the idea of value itself. Why does a thin piece of paper or a glowing number on a screen feel so powerful? Why do we trust it, fear it, and depend on it as though it were food or air? This takes us to our first paradox: the illusion of value. Imagine this. You're holding a small, worn piece of paper between your fingers. It crinkles softly, edges rough from years of being passed hand to hand. There's some ink on it, a symbol, a number, maybe even the face of someone long dead. That little piece of paper can buy you food, or warmth, or even a night in a soft bed. Now imagine something else. The same piece of paper, burned to ash in a fire, fluttering away in the wind. Once it's destroyed, once no one can see it, it has no power at all. Nothing magical leaves with the smoke. Nothing of substance has been lost, except our shared belief in what it represented. This is the strange illusion of money. It is not the food that sustains us, not the clothes that keep us warm, not the shelter that protects us from storms. It is only the promise that such things might be given to us in exchange for these symbols we carry. Yet, this fragile promise governs entire civilizations, and often our very sense of safety and identity. Why does a thin piece of paper, or more often today, a glowing number on a screen, have the power to make us feel safe, or afraid, or even proud? How is it that an arrangement of pixels on your phone, digits shifting quietly in the banking system's servers, can cause your chest to tighten with worry or loosen with relief? Pause here and really let that settle in. Because this is not just economics, it is a meditation on belief itself. A shared dream. Money is a shared illusion, and like all illusions, it depends on the cooperation of its audience. A dollar, a yen, a peso, these are not valuable in and of themselves. They are valuable only because we, collectively, act as though they are. It is a game of make-believe that has gone on so long, it no longer feels like a game at all. Consider this. In ancient societies, shells were money. Cowrie shells, to be specific, smooth, oval little objects plucked from the sea. Why shells? They were beautiful, durable, difficult to counterfeit, and relatively rare, depending on the location. They became tokens of exchange, accepted not because of their inherent qualities, but because people trusted others would also accept them. Later, in other cultures, large carved stones served as currency. The Yap people of Micronesia used massive limestone discs, some so heavy they could not be moved. Ownership was tracked by the community, not by physical possession. Imagine a stone too heavy to carry, yet able to pay for a marriage or a voyage. The illusion was so strong, the stone didn't even need to change hands. Everyone simply remembered who owned it. This is the heart of the illusion. Money is a story, told not once, but over and over, until it becomes indistinguishable from reality. Gold, paper, and digital air. As societies grew, the illusion adapted. Gold became the favored medium of exchange, its shine resistant to time, its weight reassuring. But even gold is just another story. Why not copper, or iron, or polished wood? The answer lies in our collective preference. Gold did not rot, rust, or corrode easily, and so it became the protagonist in humanity's grand financial tale. But eventually, even carrying gold became cumbersome. And so, humans invented paper money. Thin sheets of pulp inked with seals and signatures. Promises that somewhere, gold was stored in a vault. Paper, backed by metal, carried value. But soon enough, even that connection was severed. Nations abandoned the gold standard, and suddenly, paper was valuable not because it was redeemable, but because governments declared it to be so. Today, much of our money doesn't even exist as paper. It exists as glowing numbers in the digital ether, flowing through banking apps and trading platforms. Cryptocurrency has gone further still, stripping away any government backing, any vaults, even any paper. What remains? A consensus enforced by mathematics and belief. And here lies the paradox. Money feels real, but its power depends entirely on faith. If everyone stopped believing, if everyone refused to play the game, money would vanish into nothingness overnight. The fragility of belief. Imagine for a moment that you wake tomorrow and every single person on earth has forgotten the value of money. They remember what food is, what shelter is, what water is. They still feel hunger, cold, and thirst. But the idea that small discs of metal or glowing numbers could solve those problems is gone. In that world, what would happen? Would a baker still hand you bread for a crumpled note? Would an innkeeper offer you a bed for a rectangle of plastic with a magnetic strip? Of course not. In the absence of shared belief, money reverts instantly to nothing more than its raw materials: paper, plastic, digits, and dust. This is the haunting fragility at the core of money. We trust it so deeply, but its roots are made not of metal, or law, but of faith. Pause here. Breathe in and think. The next time you hold a coin or glance at your bank balance, you are not looking at reality, but at a story. The psychological weight of symbols. But if money is merely a story, why does it carry such profound psychological weight? Why does your chest clench when the bank account dips? And why does your mood soar with a raise or a windfall? Humans are uniquely susceptible to symbols. A flag can inspire loyalty strong enough to send people to war. A religious icon can carry a sense of awe or holiness. And money, perhaps more than any symbol, connects directly to our survival. We equate money with food, shelter, security, freedom, even if in reality it is only an indirect proxy. Think about it. A paycheck is not food. A paycheck is not warmth. Yet it represents the possibility of those things, and so it becomes a stand-in for survival itself. This is why losing money feels like losing safety, and gaining money feels like gaining life itself. And yet, at its heart, it remains an illusion, one of the most convincing illusions humanity has ever agreed upon. The paradox of fiction that feels real. Money is fiction that behaves like fact. Like a character in a novel who leaps off the page and begins to walk among us. It is not real, but it exerts real force. In this way, money resembles other powerful fictions, nations, corporations, even laws. None of these exist in the natural world. You cannot point to a country on the ground, only to a piece of land we have labeled with borders. You cannot touch the law in your hand, only paper where it is written. And you cannot see a corporation walking down the street, only people acting in its name. Money belongs to this family of imagined realities, stories so deeply ingrained that they govern behavior as firmly as mountains or rivers. The existential layer. Here's where the illusion grows deeper still. If money is a story, then so much of our lives, our work, our stress, our ambitions are devoted to maintaining a fiction. We strive, we sacrifice, we compete, often not for food or shelter directly, but for tokens that symbolize those things. This raises an unsettling question. How much of your life has been shaped not by physical reality, but by the belief in this grand illusion? How many late nights, how many anxious mornings, how many decisions, big or small, have been determined by numbers that exist only because we agree they should? Take a moment here. Let that question echo in your mind. Let yourself drift into the thought that perhaps much of what you chase is not tangible at all. The breaking of illusions. History gives us moments when the illusion cracked. Think of the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany, where people carried wheelbarrows of banknotes to buy bread. Or Zimbabwe in the 2000s, where trillion-dollar bills became worthless almost overnight. In those moments, belief faltered and the illusion collapsed. What had been considered valuable became laughable. Paper money became less useful than kindling for a fire. When the story breaks, it breaks completely. And yet, inevitably, humans rebuild the story again. A new currency, a new agreement, a new illusion. Because even though money is a story, it is a story we seem unable to live without, living inside the illusion. So where does that leave us? Perhaps with this understanding, money is not real, but its effects are. It is not food, but it buys food. It is not shelter, but it grants shelter. It is not time, but it trades for time. It is illusion, yet within the illusion, it has real power. The paradox is sharp and inescapable. We are both the authors of the story and its prisoners. We could change the story tomorrow, but we rarely do, because the illusion binds us together. And so, when you look at money, when you think of it, hold it, or long for it, remember this: you are not holding value itself. You are holding belief compressed, agreed upon, and passed between hands like a fragile flame. And yet, if money is just a story, why does it still have the ability to shape our emotions so deeply? Why can a simple number on a bank screen fill us with dread or joy? This leads us into another paradox, one that lives at the very heart of economics itself, the scarcity paradox. Imagine standing in front of a table. On it rests a loaf of bread, freshly baked, still warm. The smell fills the air, and your body reacts immediately. You feel hunger stir inside you. One loaf, one person, one need. But what happens if a second person arrives, equally hungry? What if a third joins? What if there are 10 or 100? Suddenly, one loaf is no longer enough. The moment demand exceeds supply, the shadow of scarcity appears. This is the foundation of economics. Scarcity, the idea that there are not enough resources to meet every desire. It is the starting point of every economic theory, the silent assumption behind every transaction. Without scarcity, there would be no need for exchange, no need for prices, no need for money itself. And yet, look around our modern world. Shelves in supermarkets bend beneath the weight of food. Warehouses overflow with clothes. Digital servers pulse with more information than any human being could consume in 1,000 lifetimes. And still, somehow, scarcity governs us. We feel it pressing at the edges of our decisions, our anxieties, our lives. This is the paradox. The ancient roots of scarcity. The awareness of scarcity is ancient, older than writing, older than agriculture. Imagine yourself tens of thousands of years ago, walking with a small group of hunter-gatherers. The seasons shift, and the wild berries that once fed you vanish. The herds of animals you follow move farther north, or perhaps they dwindle. Hunger gnaws. Cold tightens its grip. Scarcity here is obvious, physical, undeniable. There is simply not enough food, not enough warmth. Scarcity meant survival then. It taught us caution, forced us into cleverness. Out of scarcity grew the spark of invention. Fire, tools, storage, farming. Every step of human progress was, in some way, an answer to the sting of scarcity. And yet, as we built cities and kingdoms, scarcity did not vanish. Instead, it transformed. Even in wealthy empires, not everyone ate well. Even in fertile lands, wars erupted over resources. The illusion of not enough remained, even when granaries overflowed. Modern abundance, ancient fear. Fast forward to today. If you live in a developed nation, it is likely you can walk into a grocery store and choose from hundreds of items at will. At the click of a button, clothes, tools, or luxuries can arrive at your door. In the digital world, abundance is even stranger. A single scroll through the internet delivers more images, words, and voices than any one person can process. It is, in a sense, a flood, and yet scarcity lingers. We speak of not having enough time, enough money, enough attention. People are anxious despite overflowing shelves. We feel poor in the midst of plenty. Why? Perhaps scarcity was never just about things. Perhaps it lives deeper, inside human desire itself. The desire that outruns supply. Human desire is infinite. The moment one wish is satisfied, another emerges. The hunger that once was for bread becomes a hunger for flavor, for variety, for elegance, for status. The need for shelter transforms into a longing for beauty, location, prestige. This shifting ladder of desire ensures that scarcity is never conquered, only reshaped. Even when basic needs are met, we invent new forms of scarcity: prestige, exclusivity, rarity. Luxury goods play on this principle. A simple handbag holds belongings as well as any other, but one with a famous logo is scarce, limited, and therefore desired. The paradox deepens. We live in abundance, but our desires always run faster than supply. Scarcity persists, not because the world cannot provide, but because our imaginations cannot rest. Pause for a moment. Think about a time when you wanted something desperately. Perhaps a new device, a new job, a new experience. You might have told yourself that once you achieved it, Once you obtained it, you would finally feel satisfied. And perhaps you did for a little while, but soon a new desire appeared. The horizon of satisfaction kept moving. This is the treadmill of scarcity, the psychology of not enough. Psychologists have studied how scarcity shapes the mind. When people feel they lack something, money, time, food, their attention narrows. Scarcity consumes mental bandwidth, leaving less capacity for long-term planning. Poverty is not only the absence of resources, it is also the weight of mental strain. But scarcity also sharpens focus. It can drive innovation, ignite creativity, push people to solve problems in ways they never would have considered otherwise. Some of history's greatest leaps forward happened under the pressure of scarcity. Wars accelerate technology, famines alter agriculture, crises create reforms. Scarcity both cripples and inspires. And this reveals another paradox. Scarcity is both a curse and a catalyst. It is the very thing we dream of escaping, yet often the very thing that drives us forward. Scarcity in a world of waste. Consider food. Globally, humans produce enough to feed everyone on Earth, and yet hunger persists. Mountains of food are wasted daily, discarded for imperfections, lost in supply chains, left to rot in landfills. How can hunger and waste coexist? This is scarcity in its modern disguise. It is not about absolute limits of production, but about distribution, access, and inequality. There is enough, but not for everyone. Systems of trade, profit, and policy ensure that some starve while others discard excess. The same is true with clothing. Fast fashion produces more garments than the planet's people could wear, while many live with tattered clothes or none at all. Information too. The world produces more data every second than any individual could consume in a lifetime. Yet still, we speak of information scarcity of people cut off, lacking access, living in digital deserts. Scarcity, then, is not always about what exists. It is about who controls it, who reaches it, and who is denied. The engine of economics. Scarcity is the silent engine of economics. It sets prices, determines wages, creates competition. If everything were abundant, money would lose its purpose. Prices exist because scarcity exists. But here lies another paradox. When abundance appears, markets often reinvent scarcity. Think of luxury brands releasing limited editions. Think of digital platforms creating artificial scarcity through paywalls or exclusivity. Even in the world of infinite digital replication, where a song, a book, or an image can be copied endlessly, companies create scarcity through copyright, licenses, and control. The truth is unsettling. Scarcity is not only discovered, it is manufactured. Without scarcity, entire industries would vanish. Scarcity of time. Perhaps the most profound scarcity of all is time. No matter how abundant the world's resources, each of us lives with a finite span. 24 hours in a day, a limited number of years in a life. Time scarcity cannot be solved by abundance. Technology can make tasks faster, medicine can extend lifespan, but the essential truth remains: time is limited. And so, scarcity lives in the rhythm of our days, in the awareness of mortality. Pause here. Feel the weight of time passing, the seconds slipping quietly forward as you breathe. This scarcity cannot be hoarded, bought, or borrowed. It is the truest scarcity of all, the spiritual dimension of scarcity. If scarcity is not only physical, but psychological, even existential, what does it mean for us spiritually? Religions and philosophies across history have wrestled with the paradox of desire. Buddhism speaks of craving as the root of suffering. Christianity warns against the endless pursuit of wealth and possessions. Stoic philosophers remind us that peace comes not from abundance, but from learning to desire less. Perhaps the greatest paradox of scarcity is this: the more we desire, the poorer we feel. The less we desire, the richer we feel. Scarcity and abundance may not be external conditions, but states of mind. The scarcity mindset vs. the abundance mindset. Modern self-help often speaks of the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset. A scarcity mindset believes there is never enough money, success, love. An abundance mindset believes there is plenty and that opportunities are endless. But these are not merely attitudes. They shape behavior in profound ways. A scarcity mindset can make people hoard, compete, and fear. An abundance mindset can make them share, risk, and create. The paradox is that both are true. There is scarcity in the world, and there is abundance in the world. Which we perceive depends on where we look and what we choose to believe. Reflections to desire. At the center of all this lies desire. Human desire does not rest. Once, survival required desire. Without hunger, we would not eat. Without longing for warmth, we would not seek shelter. But in the modern age, desire has become unmoored from necessity. We desire not just to survive, but to expand endlessly. This endless expansion ensures that scarcity is eternal. Even if the world gave us more than we could ever use, we would still invent new forms of scarcity to chase. Pause again. Reflect on your own life. How often have you felt that what you had was not enough money, not enough time, not enough achievement? And how often, looking back, do you realize you already had more than enough, but simply could not see it at the time? Scarcity as illusion. And so we arrive at the final layer of the paradox. Scarcity is real, but also illusion. There is not enough of some things, yes, but the feeling of not enoughness often springs not from reality, but from desire, comparison, and fear. Scarcity is powerful because it shapes perception. And perception is, in many ways, the reality we live in. If scarcity shapes our lives so profoundly, then what happens when money, the symbol we use to navigate scarcity, is manipulated in ways that seem to multiply endlessly? What happens when we borrow from the future to satisfy the present? The debt paradox. Imagine a quiet marketplace in an ancient town. A farmer arrives, leading a cart filled with grain. A weaver approaches, holding a basket of cloth. They meet, they talk, they barter. The farmer wants clothing, and the weaver wants bread. But what happens if their needs do not align at that moment? What if the farmer's grain is not yet harvested? What if the weaver has not finished her cloth? The exchange collapses unless there is a bridge. That bridge is debt, a promise. I will give you this later if you trust me now. Debt, at its core, is a story of trust across time. It allows us to use resources we do not yet have, to borrow from a future that has not yet arrived. This is the strangeness of debt. It is not merely economic, it is temporal. It bends time, pulling tomorrow into today. And so, the question emerges, both practical and haunting. Can borrowing make you richer, or only more trapped? The birth of borrowing. Debt is older than money itself. Long before coins clinked in purses or bills shuffled between hands, people borrowed. They borrowed seeds from neighbors, animals from kin, tools from friends. They borrowed with the understanding that one day they would repay, not always in the same form, but in kind, in labor, or in loyalty. Archaeologists have found clay tablets from Mesopotamia, 5,000 years old, recording debts. A farmer might owe a portion of his harvest to a lender, written in the etched strokes of cuneiform. Interest was charged, often cruelly high, and when repayment failed, the borrower or his family could fall into servitude. Debt here was not abstract. It was a bond of flesh and blood. And yet, without debt, those farmers might not have survived. Borrowing seeds allowed crops to be planted. Borrowing tools allowed work to continue. Debt was a lifeline and a chain, both at once. Pause here and consider. Debt has always walked this double path, part salvation, part prison. Nations built on borrowing. It is not only individuals who borrow. Nations themselves rise and fall on the strength of debt. Wars have been fought not only with soldiers and steel, but with loans. The great empires of Europe were financed by debts stretching across oceans. Bonds sold to investors who trusted or gambled that kingdoms would repay them with future spoils. The United States was born in debt. After the Revolutionary War, the fledgling nation owed millions. Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, argued that this was not a weakness but a strength. A nation with debt, he said, would have creditors invested in its success. To owe is to bind others to your survival. Today, modern economies are built on layers of borrowing so vast they are almost incomprehensible. Governments sell bonds to finance schools, roads, armies. Corporations issue debt to fund expansion. Families borrow to buy homes, cars, education. Without debt, economies would not simply shrink, they would collapse. But with too much debt, collapse can come anyway. The fragile balance. This is the paradox. Debt creates wealth, yet too much of it destroys wealth. A small loan allows a shopkeeper to buy goods, which she sells at a profit, repaying the loan and growing her business. A student borrows to pay tuition, gains skills, and earns a higher income for life. A nation borrows to build railroads, unlocking growth that more than repays the cost. But a loan too large, too risky, too relentless can strangle instead of sustain. The shopkeeper drowns in interest payments. The student cannot find work and spends decades shackled to debt. The nation's borrowing grows so vast that its currency weakens, its creditors flee, its economy falters. Debt is a knife. It can carve a future or cut a throat. The psychological weight of owning. Beyond the numbers, debt carries a heavy psychological burden. To be in debt is to live in the future's shadow. Each decision today is colored by the repayment that must come tomorrow. Think of the sleepless nights of someone owing more than they can repay. Bills pile, interest grows, calls from creditors come. The sense of being trapped grows suffocating. Debt is invisible, yet it presses as heavily as iron chains. And yet, at the same time, debt can also give hope. A loan can feel like possibility, like opportunity. The borrowed money lets a dream begin. The paradox is sharp. Debt is both the cause of anxiety and the promise of freedom. Pause here. Reflect on a time when you borrowed something, not necessarily money, but time, or help, or trust. Did it feel like a gift or like a weight? Perhaps both. Debt as a social contract. Debt is not only about economics, it is about relationships. To owe is to be tied to another. Debt creates bonds, sometimes bonds of trust, sometimes bonds of power. In many traditional societies, debt was not shameful. It was expected. Gifts and loans wove the fabric of community. To owe was to belong. Repayment was less about money and more about maintaining harmony. But in modern societies, debt often carries stigma. To be indebted is to be seen as weak, irresponsible, even dangerous. The story of debt has shifted from a bond of reciprocity to a mark of failure. Yet paradoxically, most modern citizens live with debt mortgages, student loans, credit cards. Debt is everywhere, yet we pretend it is shameful. A contradiction embedded in culture itself. The time-bending nature of debt. At its core, debt is about time. When you borrow, you pull the future into the present. You eat tomorrow's bread today. You spend tomorrow's labor now. This is what makes debt so strange. It is not only an exchange of money, but of time itself. And time, unlike money, cannot be manufactured. You can print more currency, but you cannot print more days. Debt always carries the risk that the future will not arrive as planned. Crops may fail. Jobs may vanish. Nations may fall. When the future disappoints, debt becomes unbearable. This is why debt crises are so devastating. They reveal the fragility of borrowing against an unknown tomorrow. The myth of infinite borrowing. Modern finance sometimes pretends that debt can grow without limit. Governments borrow trillions. Corporations borrow billions. Individuals borrow for decades. And as long as payments are made, the illusion holds. But history warns otherwise. The debt of ancient Athens led to slavery and revolt. The debt of monarchies fueled revolutions. The debt of modern nations has triggered financial crises that ripple across the globe. The paradox. Debt feels like growth until suddenly it becomes collapse. The existential layer. Debt raises not only economic questions, but existential ones. What does it mean to live a life in debt? Consider this. Every human is born into a kind of debt. We are indebted to the parents who raised us, the societies that taught us, the planet that sustains us. We owe a debt of existence itself. Some traditions even speak of debt to the gods or to fate. And in another sense, time itself is a debt. Every second we live is borrowed against the certainty of death. Life is a loan we cannot repay except by living. This may sound unsettling, but there is also beauty here. Debt reminds us that we are not isolated. We are bound, connected, responsible to others and to the future. Take a moment now to reflect. Debt is everywhere. It is in the bills we pay, the nations we live in, the invisible bargains we strike every day. But more than that, it is in the fabric of time itself, in the way we borrow from tomorrow just to make today possible. The paradox is this. Debt is both the foundation of growth and the seed of ruin. It is the thread that binds present to future and the weight that can drag us under. It is trust and fear, hope and despair, all entwined. And so, if debt ties the present to the future, bending time itself, what about money's relationship with time in a broader sense? For beyond debt, there lies another paradox, the way we trade hours for wages, and wages for hours. The paradox of time and money. The time-money illusion. We often hear the saying, time is money. The phrase slips so easily from our lips that it feels like an unquestionable truth, a law of existence as simple as gravity. But what if that old saying is only half true? What if the relationship between time and money is stranger, more paradoxical, more haunting than we usually admit? Imagine a single hour of your life, 60 minutes ticking quietly away. Perhaps in that hour you sit at a desk, typing. Perhaps you lift boxes, serve food, teach children, or answer calls. At the end of that hour, you receive money. Not because the hour itself can be bought or sold, but because we have agreed that labor the way you spend your time can be measured, priced, and exchanged. And so, the idea takes hold. Your hours are not only yours. They belong partly to those who can pay for them. But then consider this. The money you earn in those hours can later be used to buy back time. You can pay someone else to cook for you, or to clean, or to fix your roof. You can pay for faster travel, for convenience, for health care that prolongs your years. Time creates money, and money buys back time. A cycle. A loop. Here lies the paradox. Time is money, yes, but money is also time. And yet, for all our trading, our earning, our buying and selling, no one, no matter how wealthy, has ever managed to purchase a single extra second of life beyond their natural span. The origins of the phrase. The phrase time is money was popularized by Benjamin Franklin in the 18th century. In his essay, Advice to a Young Tradesman, Franklin warned that lost time is never found again, and that time is money. It was a message to be industrious, to recognize that every idle hour was a loss of potential earnings. But even before Franklin, humans understood the connection between time and value. Farmers rose with the sun, for every wasted hour of daylight meant less work in the fields. Craftsmen and traders knew that delays meant lost sales. Time was not yet measured in wages, but it was already measured in survival. Industrialization hardened the bond. Factories needed workers to arrive at precise hours, and clocks became tools of discipline. No longer was time shaped by seasons or the rising sun, but by bells, whistles, and schedules. Time was chopped into hours, wages attached like price tags. And so, time and money were married sometimes by love, but often by force. The sale of hours. Consider what it means to sell your time. When you agree to work for a wage, you are not selling the task itself, you are selling the hours it takes. The employer does not buy your creativity or your body outright, only the portion of your life you have agreed to give. This raises unsettling questions. If your time is bought, is your life partially owned by another? If you sell 40 hours a week, do those hours still belong to you? The irony is sharp. We speak of making a living, but in truth, we are often trading slices of our life away. The paycheck is not just money. It is a receipt for hours already gone, never to return. Pause here and let that thought rest. Every dollar you hold is not only a symbol of value. It is a fossil of time already spent. Money as time machine. Yet the paradox deepens. The money earned from past hours can buy back time in the future. Think of hiring someone to mow your lawn. By paying them, you free yourself from that task, reclaiming an hour, or paying for a faster train, saving 2 hours of travel, or buying medicine that grants you more years of life. In each case, money acts like a time machine, shifting how much of life is available to you. But notice something crucial. The hours you buy are not truly extra hours. They are merely hours unburdened, hours shifted, hours spared from one task to be spent on another. No one escapes the boundary of mortality. Even billionaires with armies of assistants, private jets, and the best healthcare still find that their lives have an endpoint. The clock does not negotiate. This is the haunting truth. Money can rearrange your hours, but it cannot create more of them. The inequality of time. If money cannot create more time, why does it so often feel like the rich live longer, fuller lives? Statistics show that wealth and longevity are deeply connected. The wealthy have better health care, safer neighborhoods, less stress from survival. They can afford healthier food, cleaner air, more rest. In many societies, the gap in life expectancy between rich and poor stretches across decades. It is not that money buys extra time, but that money shields time. It protects the fragile span of human life from being wasted in struggle. A poor person may spend hours waiting in lines, working multiple jobs, worrying about bills. A wealthy person may spend those same hours on leisure, creativity, or rest. Both live within the same span of years, but the texture of their time is different. And here lies another paradox. Time is equally distributed, everyone receives. 24 hours in a day, but unequally experienced. For some, hours are heavy, filled with exhaustion. For others, hours are light, filled with freedom. The inequality of time is not measured in clocks, but in quality. The commodification of life. The time-money illusion goes further. In modern economies, not only hours, but entire life stages are commodified. Education is framed as an investment in future earnings. Retirement is framed as the reward for years of soul labor. Vacations are rationed as brief returns of your own time. Even rest is monetized. The sleep industry sells mattresses, apps, supplements, all promising to give you better use of your hours in bed. Leisure itself becomes a market, offering to optimize the little time you are given back. It is as though life has been carved into segments: childhood, work years, retirement, and each segment is measured against money. The illusion whispers, if you manage your money well, you will reclaim your time. If you fail, time itself will abandon you. Pause for a moment and consider how much of your life feels like your own. How many of your hours belong to you, untouched by obligation, free of debt, free of schedules. The existential limit. For all the clever ways humans link money and time, there is one truth that resists every attempt. Time cannot be owned. A billionaire can pay for the best medical care, but still, their heart will one day stop. A laborer can save every penny, but still, the years slip through their hands. Time is not property, not possession. It is passing, flowing, irretrievable. This is what makes the illusion so powerful. We treat money as though it can command time, but ultimately, time is sovereign. It gives, it takes, without negotiation. Even the wealthiest person, on their final day, discovers that money is powerless against the last tick of the clock. Cultural visions of time and money. Different cultures reveal different ways of relating time to wealth. In some traditions, time is seen as cyclical, eternal, less bound to profit. Agricultural societies once lived by seasons, not by hours. Life moved with the sun, with the harvest, with the rains. Time was abundant, though work was hard. In industrial societies, time became linear, segmented, scarce. Clocks ruled the day. Wages were tied to minutes, seconds, efficiency. Time became a currency, measured and exchanged. In digital societies, the relationship grows stranger still. We no longer only sell our hours of labor, we sell our attention. Companies compete for our minutes, our scrolling, our gaze. Time itself becomes the commodity, traded invisibly, monetized in clicks and ads. This evolution reveals a chilling truth. As long as humans live within systems of exchange, time will be entangled with money. The illusion of saving time. Think of all the inventions said to save time: cars, planes, washing machines, computers, smartphones. Each promised to reduce the hours of labor, to give us more free time. And yet, people today often feel busier than ever. The hours saved are quickly filled with new tasks, new expectations, new pressures. This is another illusion. Time saving does not always mean time gaining. Often, it only shifts the burden. You save 30 minutes with a washing machine, but spend 30 minutes answering emails. You fly across the world in hours instead of weeks, but fill those saved days with more work. The paradox emerges again. Technology multiplies convenience, but rarely multiplies rest. Think back on your own life. How many times have you told yourself, if I just had more money, I would have more time? And how many times after earning more, did you find that your hours were still scarce, still rushed, still slipping? It seems that money cannot resolve the scarcity of time, only rearrange it. To live with peace is not to earn infinite wealth, but to choose carefully how the hours you already have are spent. Take a slow breath here and let that realization soften your thoughts. The spiritual echo. The link between time and money raises not only economic questions, but spiritual ones. If time is finite, how should we live it? If money cannot buy eternity, what is its purpose? Religions remind us that life itself is a gift unpurchasable. Philosophies remind us that a well-lived life is not measured in wealth, but in presence, in connection, in meaning. Perhaps the greatest illusion is not that time is money, but that money can give meaning to time. And so we return to the paradox. Time creates money, and money buys back time. Yet neither side of the exchange can overcome mortality. The clock ticks, regardless of wealth. The illusion tempts us to believe that we can control time with money, but time remains free, untamed, flowing forward. The best we can do is learn to spend it with care. And this tension between the hours of life and the money we earn leads naturally to another paradox. If money cannot buy more time, can it at least buy more happiness? Or does the pursuit of wealth only leave us emptier still? In the next segment, we turn to the paradox of happiness. The happiness paradox. Picture a quiet evening. You are sitting in a comfortable chair, the light fading, a warm drink in your hand. The bills are paid, the pantry is stocked, and tomorrow holds no immediate worries. In that moment, you feel a sense of ease, comfort, relief, perhaps even happiness. And yet, not far beneath the surface, another thought begins to stir. What more could I have? This is the strange tension that money weaves into our lives. It can buy comfort, it can buy safety. It can even buy experiences that make us smile, laugh, and celebrate. But it cannot guarantee joy. Why? We return again to the heart of paradox, the threshold of enough. Researchers in psychology have tried to answer the question with numbers, as though happiness itself could be measured in currency. Studies across nations reveal that money does, indeed, increase happiness up to a certain point. When basic needs are met, food, shelter, healthcare, security, each additional dollar does add a little more satisfaction. But beyond that threshold, the curve begins to flatten. Wealthy individuals may feel more comfortable, but not proportionally more joyful. Imagine two people. One earns just enough to cover rent and food. The other earns 10 times more. The second may have a larger house, a safer car, more exotic vacations. But in day-to-day contentment, the difference is often surprisingly small. Once survival is secured, money's ability to elevate happiness weakens until it feels more like a whisper than a shout. And yet, despite this truth, millions devote their lives to chasing money beyond the threshold. They sacrifice hours, health, even relationships in pursuit of a promise that rarely arrives. Pause here and let that thought rest. Perhaps you, too, have felt the gap between what you expected money to bring and what it actually delivered. The hedonic treadmill. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. When we gain more wealth, more possessions, or more status, we feel a burst of happiness. But soon we adapt. The new house becomes ordinary. The new car becomes familiar. The vacation fades into memory. We return to our baseline, and the treadmill begins again. The paradox is cruel. The more we chase happiness through money, the faster the treadmill runs, leaving us exhausted but no closer to the joy we imagined. Think of a child longing for a toy. For days, the anticipation grows. The toy arrives, and for a brief time, delight blooms. But soon, the toy sits in a corner, ignored, and a new desire takes its place. Adults are not so different. Our toys are bigger, more expensive, but the cycle is the same. The invisible costs of pursuit. Chasing happiness through money often steals the very happiness it promises. How many people work long hours, convinced they are securing a better life, only to miss the moments of life itself: family dinners, quiet mornings, the laughter of friends. The paradox sharpens here. The pursuit of wealth for future happiness often requires sacrificing present happiness. Hours of leisure are traded for wages. Relationships are neglected for promotions. Health is eroded by stress. By the time the reward arrives, the capacity to enjoy it may have already diminished. Pause again. Consider this unsettling thought. In our hunger for tomorrow's comfort, we may spend today's joy as if it were worthless. Happiness beyond wealth. If money cannot guarantee happiness, what can? History and philosophy offer clues. Ancient Greek thinkers like Epicurus argued that happiness comes not from abundance, but from simplicity, friendship, reflection, freedom from unnecessary desires. Buddhist teachings echo this, pointing to craving itself as the root of suffering. Stoic philosophers remind us that control over one's mind matters more than control over one's fortune. Modern research agrees. Beyond the threshold of comfort, happiness is often shaped more by relationships, purpose, gratitude, and meaning than by income. A wealthy person isolated and anxious may feel less joy than a modest earner surrounded by love and belonging. And yet, societies rarely honor these truths. Wealth is displayed, measured, envied, while meaning and connection slip quietly into the background. Cultural stories of wealth and joy. Across cultures, stories warn of the trap of wealth without joy. King Midas, who wished everything he touched would turn to gold, discovered his gift was a curse: his food, his daughter, all lifeless treasures. In many traditions, the miser is ridiculed, the generous praised. Yet modern culture tells a different story. Advertisements whisper that happiness is always one purchase away, that wealth equals freedom, that more is better. These competing stories tug at us constantly, leaving us uncertain. Should we strive for more or be content with less? The paradox is not only personal but cultural, shaping entire societies in their restless pursuit of wealth. The happiness gap. We might ask, if wealth does not guarantee happiness, why do we still believe it will? Perhaps because we mistake comfort for joy. Comfort removes pain, eases stress, provides security. It feels close to happiness. But joy is something deeper, more elusive. It is laughter, wonder, awe, connection, things money can sometimes create the conditions for, but never supply directly. Think of two people at a concert. One sits in the most expensive seat, sipping champagne. The other stands at the back, surrounded by friends, swaying to the music. Who is happier? Perhaps the one who paid less. The concert is the same. The joy is not in the price, but in the presence. The economics of contentment. There is another paradox here. Economists often assume that humans are rational actors, pursuing wealth to maximize well-being. But if wealth does not guarantee happiness, then the system itself is built on a flawed assumption. People chase more, even when enough has already been reached. This reveals a truth we often avoid. The economy is not designed for happiness. It is designed for growth. Growth requires desire, and desire requires dissatisfaction. If people ever truly felt they had enough, entire industries would collapse. In this sense, the unhappiness of wealth is not accidental. It is essential to the system. The treadmill is not broken. It is the machine. The shadow of comparison. Another layer deepens the paradox. Happiness is rarely measured in isolation. It is measured in comparison. Studies show that people often prefer earning less money overall if it means earning more than their peers. A person may be content with their income until they discover their neighbor earns more, and suddenly contentment curdles into envy. This reveals how money's relationship to happiness is entangled with status, pride, and identity. We do not simply want wealth, we want relative wealth. We want to feel ahead, not behind. And this chase, fueled by comparison, ensures that happiness remains elusive. Pause here. Ask yourself quietly, when you dream of more wealth, is it truly for your comfort or for your standing in the invisible race of comparison? The fragility of joy. The paradox of happiness is also tied to fragility. Wealth can shield us from some pains, but it cannot shield us from grief, loss, illness, or mortality. No amount of money buys immunity from the human condition. And so, those who equate wealth with joy are often devastated when tragedy comes. The illusion is revealed. Money can soften the edges of life, but it cannot erase life's core hardships. This realization, while sobering, can also be freeing. If happiness is not in wealth, then it must be sought elsewhere, in presence, in meaning, in connection, in gratitude. These cannot be purchased, only lived. Reflections on enough. Perhaps the real question is not how much money creates happiness, but how much is enough. Enough to eat, to rest, to feel secure. Enough to free the mind from constant worry. Beyond that, the chase may only distract. The paradox is that we often do not recognize enough until we have already passed it, racing further, convinced joy lies just beyond the next horizon. Pause now. Ask yourself, have you ever already had enough without realizing it? The happiness paradox is one of the most haunting of all. Money buys comfort, but not joy. It lifts us to security, but rarely to peace. It promises freedom, yet binds us to an endless chase. And still, we run after it, as though the next raise, the next purchase, the next balance in the bank will finally unlock contentment. Perhaps the deeper truth is this: happiness is not for sale. It is not in the store, not in the bank, not in the paycheck. It is in the quiet spaces money cannot touch. But what happens when money itself multiplies, when too much of it floods the system? If money cannot buy happiness, can an excess of it bring only confusion, distortion, and even suffering? This leads us to the next paradox, the strange, destabilizing puzzle of inflation. The inflation paradox. Imagine you are standing in line at a bakery. The smell of fresh bread curls through the air. You reach into your pocket and hold a single coin, one that yesterday could buy 2 loaves. Today, the price has doubled. Tomorrow, it may double again. Your coin, the same piece of metal, feels smaller and smaller in your hand, as though it is shrinking invisibly, losing weight with every passing day. What if more money makes everything feel like less? This is the strange puzzle of inflation. The nature of inflation. Inflation is simple to describe, but complex to feel. It occurs when too much money chases too few goods. When the supply of money expands faster than the supply of things to buy, prices rise. Each unit of money buys less, and the illusion of wealth begins to erode. It is a subtle thief. Your bank balance may look the same, but its power has weakened. What once could fill a cart now fills only a basket. What once felt secure now feels uncertain. Inflation is not just an economic concept, it is a lived experience. It appears at the grocery store, at the gas pump, in rent, in wages. It whispers through every transaction. Your money does not stretch as far as it once did. The promise of printing. On paper, it seems paradoxical. If money is scarce, why not simply create more? Why not print bills until every person feels wealthy? The printing press can churn endlessly, producing stacks of notes, coins, or digits on screens. And yet, history teaches that printing more money rarely creates prosperity. Instead, it erodes trust. When everyone has more, each piece is worth less. The collective agreement that gives money its power begins to wobble. It is like watering down wine. More liquid fills the glass, but each sip is weaker. What was once rich and intoxicating becomes thin, tasteless, disappointing. Pause here. Let that image linger. Money as watered wine, stretched until it loses its essence. The psychological weight of rising prices. Inflation unsettles not only wallets, but minds. It creates a sense of instability, of grasping sand that slips through fingers. People begin to rush, to spend quickly, to hoard goods rather than hold money. In times of high inflation, strange behaviors emerge. Shoppers buy flour, sugar, soap, anything tangible, because tomorrow the price may double, while money itself will only decay. Money, once a symbol of safety, becomes a hot coal that burns if held too long. This shift is more than economic, it is psychological. The trust that underpins society begins to fray. If money cannot hold its value, then the story we tell about exchange itself begins to unravel. Historical warnings. Weimar Germany. Perhaps the most famous story of inflation comes from Germany in the 1920s. After World War I, reparations and reckless printing combined to create hyperinflation. Prices rose not yearly, not monthly, but hourly. Workers were paid twice a day, rushing to spend wages before they evaporated. Families carried banknotes in wheelbarrows, not wallets. A loaf of bread could cost billions of marks. Children played with stacks of bills, using them as building blocks, for they were cheaper than toys. The images are haunting. Money, once precious, became trash. The illusion collapsed so thoroughly that currency was burned for heat. And yet, life went on. People adapted, traded, improvised. But the trauma lingered, shaping German memory and politics for decades to come. other echoes of hyperinflation. Weimar was not unique. In Zimbabwe in the 2000s, inflation soared so high that bills in the trillions circulated. A single egg could cost millions of dollars. Eventually, the Zimbabwean dollar was abandoned altogether, replaced by foreign currencies. In ancient Rome, emperors diluted the silver content of coins to pay armies. Each coin still gleamed, but held less substance. Confidence eroded, prices rose, and the empire itself trembled. Again and again, the same pattern emerges. When money is multiplied carelessly, its meaning shrinks. The hidden inflation of everyday life. But inflation does not always roar like a wildfire. Sometimes it creeps, subtle and steady. A cup of coffee that once cost $1 now costs $3. A movie ticket that once cost $5 now costs $15. Year by year, the change feels small, almost invisible. But over decades, it reshapes the landscape of daily life. This creeping inflation is the backdrop of modern existence. People grow accustomed to it, adjusting salaries, prices, expectations. It feels normal, natural. Yet, it is still a reminder of money's fragility. Pause again. Think of an item you once bought in childhood. Recall its price then, and its price now. Feel how the value of money has shifted quietly, slowly, like sand eroding beneath your feet. The paradox of growth and shrinkage. Here lies the paradox. Printing more money should make us richer after all. Everyone holds more. But in practice, it makes everyone poorer, for each unit buys less. Money grows, but its power shrinks. It is a strange mirror. Abundance creates scarcity. The very tool meant to increase wealth undermines it. This paradox reveals the fragile foundation of value. Money has meaning only if it holds trust. Break that trust, and the meaning dissolves. Inflation is a test of belief. Because money is a shared story, inflation is ultimately a test of belief. Do we still believe that this note, this coin, this number means what it says? If belief falters, inflation accelerates. Prices rise not only because of supply and demand, but because of expectation. If people believe money will lose value, they act in ways that ensure it does. This feedback loop reveals something haunting. Money's strength is not in metal or ink, but in faith. Inflation is not just an economic event, but a crisis of trust in the story itself. The human cost of inflation. Beyond theories and numbers, inflation carries human cost. For those with savings, it erodes years of effort. For those on fixed incomes, it means hunger, insecurity, despair. It widens inequality, for the wealthy can shield themselves with assets, while the poor watch their wages shrink. It changes behavior. Families cut back, dreams are postponed, futures shrink. Inflation, though invisible, reshapes lives as surely as war or famine. The existential echo. If money can lose value, what does it mean for us? We work, we save, we strive all for numbers that may melt away. If inflation can erode money, then perhaps money never truly belonged to us at all. This thought is unsettling, but also revealing. It reminds us that money is not the foundation of life. It is a tool, fragile and impermanent. What truly belongs to us are things money can only point to but never contain. Moments, relationships, presence, meaning. Pause here and let that realization soften your thoughts. Imagine the rising and falling of money as waves on the shore. Powerful, yes, but temporary. What remains is the sand beneath your feet, the life itself, beyond price. The inflation paradox forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. More does not always mean better. In money, as in life, abundance without substance leads to collapse. It shows us the fragility of wealth, the dependence of value on trust, the way illusions can erode with time. Money grows, yet shrinks. Riches expand, yet diminish. And in this paradox lies a quiet reminder. Perhaps the true measure of wealth is not in what money can buy, but in what inflation cannot touch. And this raises a bigger question. If money can lose value, if it can shrink, dissolve, and vanish in worth, does it ever truly belong to us at all? Which leads us into another paradox, one that asks not about money's value, but about its ownership. Do we own money, or does money, in some way, own us? The ownership paradox. Do we own money, or does money own us? It's a simple question, one that at first feels obvious. Of course we own money, we tell ourselves. We earn it, we store it, we spend it. We call it our paycheck, our savings, our wealth. We hold it in our wallets, see it in our bank accounts, and sign our names to it in transactions. But if we really pause, we begin to sense that the truth may be far stranger. Because look more closely. How often do we change our choices, our paths, our very lives because of money? How often do we stop ourselves from pursuing a dream because it won't pay enough? How often do we take a job we dislike, not because it fulfills us, but because it provides security? How often do we stay in situations, relationships, or cities not because they are right, but because money quietly dictates we must? If we are honest, we may find that money does not always sit quietly in our pockets like a loyal servant. It sits more like a master, tugging the strings, guiding the hand, whispering orders that shape the course of our lives. And so the paradox arises. We think we own money, but more often money owns us. The illusion of control, the illusion of ownership is strong. We carry bills, coins, credit cards, and believe they are ours to command. We look at our bank balance, our investments, our retirement accounts, and feel a sense of control. We imagine that because we can decide how to spend money, we are its master. But step back. Why do we spend in the first place? Why do we save? Why do we invest? Each decision is not made in isolation, but under pressure of survival, of culture, of comparison, of fear. The invisible hand of money shapes not only how we act, but why we act at all. Imagine standing at a crossroads in life. One path leads to art, the other to law. You feel passion pulling you toward the canvas, but salaries pull you toward the courtroom. Which path do you take? Many take the one that money lights, believing they have chosen freely, when in truth, money has chosen for them. The illusion of control remains, but beneath it, money owns the decision. The servant becomes the master. It is easy to see money as a tool, a servant that enables life. It pays for food, shelter, experiences. But over time, the servant becomes the master. Think of someone who devotes decades to a career they dislike, waking early, commuting long hours, tolerating stress all for the paycheck. The paycheck becomes not just a reward, but the leash that keeps them tethered. The rhythm of their life is no longer chosen, but commanded. Or think of the way money dictates even small choices. What to eat, where to live, how to spend leisure. Dreams are trimmed to fit budgets. Ambitions are reshaped to align with salaries. Love itself is often negotiated through money marriages, delayed until finances are secure. Families planned according to income, even friendships strained by differences in wealth. At some point, it is no longer clear who owns whom. Money as invisible law. Money is not just a personal influence. It is an invisible law woven into society. It determines which schools exist, which hospitals thrive, which neighborhoods flourish. It dictates the rhythm of entire nations, from interest rates to military budgets. As individuals, we are born into this system. From our first cry to our last breath, money frames the boundaries of what is possible. A child born into wealth will see one world, a child born into poverty another. Neither chose their relationship with money, but both will be shaped by it. This reveals a sobering truth. Money is not only something we own, but something we are owned by. We live within its rules, whether we consent or not. Pause here. Take a breath. Reflect on how much of your own life has been guided by this invisible law. The paradox of freedom. One of the most seductive promises of money is freedom. Earn enough, and you can free yourself from worry, from obligation, from limits. With money, you can travel, choose your work, escape the grind. And yet, the pursuit of this freedom often creates its opposite. In trying to earn enough to be free, people bind themselves to endless labor. They become chained to careers, promotions, investments. They sacrifice present freedom in the hope of future freedom, only to find that by the time it arrives, years have been spent in servitude. This is the paradox of ownership. We imagine money as the path to liberty, but often it becomes the cage itself, the psychological chains. Beyond its practical hold, money exerts a psychological grip. Think of the anxiety that arises when bills arrive, when balances dip, when debts loom. Even the wealthy are not immune. Fear of loss, of theft, of decline stalks them. The mind becomes a ledger, tallying, calculating, worrying. Joy is measured against cost. Dreams are weighed against feasibility. The imagination itself is chained, forced to bend around money's limits. Do we own money, or does money own our minds? The cultural myth of control. Societies often pretend that money is neutral, that it simply follows human will. But culture itself is saturated with money's ownership. Status is measured in wealth. Success is measured in salary. Worth is measured in possessions. Children grow up hearing that the measure of a good life is financial security. Adults chase goals defined less by passion than by pay. Even death is mediated by money, funerals, inheritances, legacies, all tied to wealth. The myth of ownership, that money is ours, hides the deeper truth. Money, in shaping culture, shapes us. The shadow of dependency. Consider how fragile this ownership is. You may believe you own your savings, your paycheck, your home, but miss a few payments, lose a job, face an illness, and suddenly the ownership dissolves. The bank reclaims, creditors pursue, systems collapse. Ownership of money is always conditional. At any moment, it can be taken by inflation, by tax, by law, by theft, by accident. And so, even when we believe we own it, money owns us more securely because we depend on it utterly, while it depends on us only collectively. The existential reflection. This paradox cuts deeper still. If money controls us, then how free are our lives? How much of what we call choice is simply the echo of money's demands? If careers, relationships, cities, and dreams are shaped by its presence or absence, then perhaps money is not just a tool, but a hidden architect of our identities. And if that is true, then who are we without it? Who would we be, stripped of its commands? Pause with that question. Imagine a world without money, or a life where its influence is silent. What would you do? Who would you become? Stories of money's mastery. History provides countless stories of money, owning those who believed they owned it. Kings bankrupt their kingdoms chasing wars they cannot afford. Families feud for generations over inheritance. Individuals lose themselves in greed, unable to stop collecting more long after enough has been reached. And at the same time, we see stories of those who walk away, monks who renounce wealth, hermits who live simply, philosophers who insist that true ownership is of the self, not possessions. Their defiance reveals money's grip more clearly than obedience ever could. The gentle illusion of balance. Perhaps the ownership paradox cannot be resolved, only balanced. We must own money enough to live, but resist letting it own us completely. To use it as tool, but not worship it as master. To hold it, but lightly, knowing it is not ours forever. This balance is delicate, like walking a rope stretched between two truths, the necessity of money and its danger. Do we own money, or does money own us? Perhaps both are true. Money sits in our pockets, yet also inside our minds. It serves us, yet commands us. It frees us, yet chains us. The paradox is that ownership flows both ways. In the end, money is not only an object to possess, but a force that possesses. And this control leads to a final puzzle. If money rules so much, if it shapes lives, cultures, even identities, why do we continue to pretend it is only a neutral tool, a blank medium of exchange? In the next segment, we turn to the neutrality myth and uncover how money is never as impartial as it seems. The neutrality myth. We are often told that money is neutral, that it is neither good nor evil, neither wise nor foolish, but merely a tool, like water flowing wherever we direct it. In this view, money itself carries no moral weight. It is only the hand that holds it, the mind that spends it, the system that uses it, that gives money any shape at all. But is that true? Is money really as neutral as water? If we pause long enough, we begin to notice cracks in this comforting myth. For money does not simply flow wherever we direct it. It flows faster to some and slower to others. It pools in certain hands, leaving deserts in others. And once concentrated, it bends the landscape itself, altering the shape of society. Perhaps money is not neutral at all. Perhaps it is more like a lens, magnifying the biases and desires of those who wield it. Perhaps it is more like fire, which can warm or burn, but always transforms whatever it touches. And so we arrive at another paradox. Money is said to be impartial, yet in reality, it amplifies every human choice, every inequality, every prejudice. The comfort of the neutrality myth. The belief in neutrality is comforting. It allows us to separate money from morality. We say, it's not money that's the problem, it's people. Money is portrayed as innocent, a blank page upon which human intention writes. This belief absolves money of responsibility. But the comfort of this myth conceals its danger. By treating money as neutral, we overlook the ways it subtly shapes the very choices we think we are making freely. Pause here. Ask yourself, how many times have you heard the phrase, money is just a tool? Did you believe it? And does it still feel so simple now? Money as a shaper of power. Consider power. Whoever controls money controls opportunity. Nations with wealth dominate geopolitics. Corporations with vast reserves dictate the direction of industries. Individuals with great fortunes can fund schools, hospitals, or armies. When money flows, it reshapes possibility. A village with funding can thrive. One without remains trapped. A candidate with financial backing can amplify their voice. One without may remain unheard. If money were neutral, these imbalances would not emerge. But money does not simply reflect human choice. It distorts it. It makes some voices louder, some dreams more attainable, some injustices harder to overcome. Money, far from neutral, quietly redraws the lines of power. The amplification of inequality. Imagine two children, born on the same day. One is born into wealth, the other into poverty. Already, money has tilted the balance. The wealthy child can access better schools, safer neighborhoods, more opportunities. The poorer child faces barriers, stress, and scarcity. Both may be equally intelligent, equally hardworking, equally full of potential. But money amplifies one life and constrains the other. Over years, the difference grows into a chasm. This is not neutrality. It is amplification. Money multiplies advantage where it exists and multiplies disadvantage where it does not. And yet, society often pretends both children stand on equal ground, as though money were simply neutral. The morality of flow. If money were truly neutral, its use would not affect morality. But how money flows changes the fabric of ethical life. $1 spent on medicine saves a life. $1 spent on weapons may end one. A fortune donated to education uplifts a generation. A fortune hoarded or hidden in offshore accounts contributes to inequality. We may insist that the money itself is neither good nor bad, but the truth is that money's impact cannot be divorced from morality. Every transaction ripples outward, shaping lives in ways both visible and invisible. The neutrality myth hides this, allowing us to act as though spending is private, isolated, consequence-free. In reality, each use of money carries weight, shaping not only personal life, but collective life. Historical evidence against neutrality. History is filled with reminders that money is not neutral. During the Industrial Revolution, wealth poured into the hands of factory owners, while laborers worked long hours in dangerous conditions for little pay. The money did not simply reflect neutral exchange. It tilted society into exploitation. In colonial times, money flowed outward from colonized nations, extracting resources, enriching empires, leaving behind scars of inequality that remain to this day. Neutral, or a force magnifying injustice? In modern times, consider political campaigns. Wealthy donors can amplify certain policies, while others without resources struggle to be heard. Money acts as a megaphone, not a blank slate. Again and again, the neutrality myth collapses in the face of reality. The psychology of bias. Even on the individual level, money amplifies bias. Studies show that when people gain wealth, they often become less empathetic to those without. They may attribute their success to effort, while dismissing the struggles of others as failure. Money, in magnifying pride, diminishes compassion. Likewise, scarcity shapes the mind differently. Those in poverty often make short-term decisions, not from lack of wisdom, but from the pressure of constant need. Money is not neutral here, either it bends psychology, reshaping thought itself. Thus, money magnifies not only systems, but minds. It takes human bias and enlarges it, distorting perception and judgment. The illusion of impartial markets. We are often told that markets are impartial, that prices emerge naturally, that supply and demand balance like a law of nature. But markets are human creations, influenced by policies, power, and privilege. When wealth accumulates, markets bend toward it. Luxury goods flourish while basic needs may languish. Pharmaceutical companies invest in profitable treatments while neglecting diseases of the poor. Tech companies design tools for those who can pay, while those without access remain invisible. The neutrality myth suggests that markets simply follow human desire. In truth, they follow money, and money is unevenly distributed. The paradox of impartiality. And so we reach the paradox. Money is said to be impartial, yet it amplifies every bias it touches. It multiplies inequality, distorts power, reshapes morality. It flows unevenly, carving deep channels through society, leaving deserts behind. Neutral? Hardly. Money is a mirror that enlarges every crack in human nature. The existential implication: if money is not neutral, then we must ask, who shapes who? Do we shape money, or does money shape us? If every decision we make with money carries moral weight, then we cannot hide behind the neutrality myth. We cannot say, it's just money. We must admit that money is an actor in the drama of human life, not a passive prop. This realization is uncomfortable, for it demands responsibility. It asks us to see every transaction as a choice, not only about value, but about values. Pause here, breathe slowly. Consider the last purchase you made. Was it neutral, or did it ripple outward in ways you did not see, shaping lives beyond your own? The fragility of belief in neutrality. The neutrality myth persists because it is easier. If money is neutral, then we are free to chase it without guilt, to hoard it without question, to spend it without reflection. To admit its non-neutrality is to admit complicity in its consequences. But myths, no matter how comforting, eventually falter. History, psychology, morality all reveal that money is never impartial. It always takes sides because it always magnifies. And perhaps That is its deepest danger. Not that it corrupts, but that it intensifies. Money is not water flowing wherever we direct it. It is more like dye, coloring everything it touches. It is more like fire, spreading faster where fuel is richest, leaving ash where it is absent. It is not neutral, not innocent, not blank. The neutrality myth crumbles when faced with reality. Money is not impartial. It is an amplifier of power, of inequality, of morality, of desire. And once we see this, we can never truly see money as neutral again. But there is something even stranger. What happens when money is not even physical, when it cannot be held, touched, or weighed? What happens when it exists only as numbers glowing on a screen, or as cryptographic puzzles in the digital void? In the next segment, we explore the virtual paradox, where money becomes less material and yet more powerful than ever before. The virtual paradox. Imagine holding a coin in your hand. You feel its weight, the coolness of metal against your skin, the small clink it makes when you drop it onto a table. It is real, tangible. You can touch it, keep it, hide it under a mattress if you like. Now imagine something else. Opening your banking app and seeing a number on a glowing screen. 500, 5,000, perhaps 50,000. The number gives you comfort or worry, depending on its size. But can you hold it? Can you feel its texture, hear its sound? No, it is only digits, a cluster of code in some distant server. And yet, which controls your life more? The coin in your hand or the numbers glowing on the screen? This is the paradox of the virtual. Most of the world's money today does not exist in coins or paper. It exists only as numbers, vast sums, moving across the globe in fractions of seconds, never touched, never seen, never even printed. Entire fortunes are built and destroyed by digits shifting in invisible systems, while the physical coins in your pocket are little more than relics. Something that does not physically exist now governs almost everything that does. The disappearance of cash. Once money was a thing you could hold. Gold coins clinked in purses, silver shone in markets, paper notes passed hand to hand. But slowly, quietly, money began to dematerialize. Banks issued checks, representing deposits rather than physical coins. Later came credit cards, pieces of plastic that granted access to invisible balances. Then online banking, where money moved without leaving a trace of ink or metal. Today, much of the world operates with barely any physical money at all. Entire countries, Sweden, South Korea, China, have shifted toward near cashless societies, where even small purchases are tapped or scanned. Coins gather dust. Paper notes feel old-fashioned. The disappearance of cash is more than convenience. It marks a profound shift. Money has left the realm of the physical and entered the realm of the virtual. The speed of the invisible. In the physical world, money once moved slowly. Gold was heavy to transport. Paper needed couriers, guards, vaults. Trade was measured in days, weeks, or months. But in the virtual world, money moves at the speed of light. In less than a second, billions can cross oceans, flowing through fiber optic cables and satellites. A trader in New York can buy or sell assets in Tokyo before a human blink completes. Banks shift reserves between continents invisibly, while algorithms carry out transactions by the millions each second. This speed changes everything. Physical wealth anchors life to place and time. Virtual wealth untethers it, making money liquid, restless, and strange. Pause here. Imagine that in the time it takes you to breathe once, millions of dollars may have moved invisibly across the globe, reshaping economies without a single coin ever leaving a pocket. Cryptocurrency and the new abstraction. If digital banking was the first step into virtuality, cryptocurrency is the leap. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and countless others exist entirely without physical form or government backing. They are strings of cryptographic code, secured by mathematics and belief. A Bitcoin is not a coin. It cannot be held, only represented. And yet, fortunes rise and fall on its movements. People build lives around currencies that do not physically exist, that are neither tangible nor guaranteed. It is perhaps the purest example of the paradox. Something immaterial, commanding immense power. Cryptocurrency believers say it is liberation, money stripped of state control. Critics say it is illusion, layered on illusion, value conjured from nothing. Either way, its influence grows. And so the virtual paradox deepens. Trust without touch. The entire system of virtual money relies on one thing: trust. We trust banks to keep accurate ledgers. We trust governments to stabilize currencies. We trust algorithms and codes we do not understand to manage cryptocurrencies. Yet none of this can be seen. If a bank balance vanishes, there is no vault of gold to reclaim, no stack of notes to point to. There are only digits gone or altered. This fragility can be terrifying. Think of financial crises, when people rush to banks to withdraw money, only to discover the institutions could not produce it. The digits outnumbered the physical notes. The illusion trembled. Money that cannot be touched requires deeper faith than money that clinks in hand. But paradoxically, the less physical it becomes, the more powerful it seems to grow. The psychological shift. Virtual money changes not only economies, but minds. When we hand over coins, we feel the loss physically. When we spend digitally, the loss is abstract, distant. Swipe, click, tap money disappears without sensation. This abstraction alters behavior. People spend more easily with credit than with cash. Digital transactions blur the line between reality and illusion. In-app purchases, subscriptions, online gambling all thrive because money feels less real when it is virtual. And yet, though intangible, the consequences remain physical. Debts accumulate. Goods are delivered. Lives are altered. The digits may not weigh anything, but the outcomes weigh everything. Virtual wealth, real power. Consider the paradox of billionaires, whose fortunes exist primarily in stock valuations. Their wealth is not stored in vaults, but in market numbers that can rise or fall with a headline. One day, they may be the richest person in the world. The next, billions vanish. Yet even when virtual, this wealth grants real power control over companies, influence over governments, the ability to shape technology and culture. This is the heart of the paradox. Virtual wealth, intangible and unstable, exerts real and lasting influence on the physical world. Bridges are built, elections swayed, lives changed, all by numbers that never existed in metal or paper. When digits collapse. But what happens when belief falters? In 2008, the global financial crisis revealed the fragility of virtual wealth. Mortgage-backed securities, derivatives, and digital trades collapsed in value, erasing trillions in mere weeks. What vanished was not gold or silver, but numbers, yet the impact was devastatingly real. Homes lost, jobs gone, families displaced. This reveals the danger of the virtual paradox. Something unreal can disappear, yet its disappearance can devastate the real. The economy is haunted by ghosts of numbers illusory, when present, destructive when gone. Existential questions. If most of the world's money is virtual, what does it mean for us? What does it mean to spend a life chasing digits that do not physically exist? Perhaps the unsettling truth is that we are no longer working for bread or shelter or land directly. We are working for numbers, abstractions, symbols, trusting that they will one day deliver the things we actually need. It is like living in a dream within a dream. We labor in the physical world for immaterial tokens, which then allow us to re-enter the physical world again. Round and round. Pause here. Let that thought linger. Perhaps much of your life's effort has been for numbers that were never truly there. The paradox stated clearly. The paradox of the virtual is simple, yet immense. Something that does not physically exist now controls everything that does. Digits command food production. Digits determine healthcare. Digits decide wars, industries, futures. You cannot touch them, yet they touch you at every turn. It is like living under the rule of an invisible emperor. The spiritual layer. Philosophically, the virtual paradox points to the fragility of human meaning-making. We invented money to make trade easier, yet our invention has escaped us, becoming an abstraction so powerful it rules its creators. Spiritually, it confronts us with the question of reality itself. If something immaterial can shape everything material, then what does that say about the boundary between real and unreal? Perhaps the boundary is thinner than we think. Perhaps our lives are always lived partly in fictions, money being only the most convincing one. Most of the world's money does not exist as coins or paper. It exists as digits, invisible, intangible, unreal. Yet this unreality shapes everything we touch. We live under the reign of something that cannot be held. We trust it, fear it, chase it, though it does not exist in any physical sense. This is the paradox of the virtual, immaterial numbers ruling a material world. And yet, when all is said and done, there is one final paradox that swallows them all. For even if money is illusion, virtual or real, one truth remains. No amount of it can outwit time. No fortune can escape mortality. In the end, the paradox of money is bound by the paradox of life itself. This brings us to the final reflection, the mortality paradox of money. The final paradox: you can't take it with you. No matter how much money one accumulates, none of it crosses the threshold of death. It is a truth so simple, so obvious, and yet so deeply resisted that much of human history is marked by the denial of it. We spend our days earning, saving, building, investing, as though wealth were a fortress that could shield us not only from hunger or cold, but from mortality itself. And yet, at the end of every story, the fortress dissolves. Close your eyes and picture the treasures of the world. Palaces gilded in gold, tombs stacked with jewels, vaults of currency, stocks, and digital ledgers blinking with untold billions. Imagine them all, gathered in one immense chamber, shimmering with power. And now, imagine a single person standing before them on the final day of their life. What can they take with them? Not a coin, not a gem, not a single digit. In that moment, wealth evaporates, leaving behind only the reality of time spent and time ended. This is the final paradox of money. It can buy nearly everything we can imagine: comfort, pleasure, power, even longer years of life through medicine and care. But it cannot buy the one thing that gives money its meaning: time itself. The ancient dream of wealth beyond death. Throughout history, humans have tried to deny this truth. Consider the tombs of the pharaohs, filled with treasures meant to accompany rulers into the afterlife. Gold masks, ornate chariots, jars of food and drink. Even servants sacrificed to continue their labor beyond the grave. The logic was simple, almost childlike. If money and possessions brought power in life, surely they must do so in death. Yet when those tombs were opened thousands of years later, the treasures remained. The gold did not follow the pharaohs. The jewels did not cross the veil. They sat in silence, untouched, their owners long vanished. What was meant as currency for eternity became relics of futility. And yet the impulse persists. From Viking burials filled with weapons and coins, to Chinese emperors entombed with armies of terracotta warriors, to modern families establishing vast trusts and estates, the hope remains the same, that wealth can soften or outwit death, but death remains indifferent. The futility of hoarding. Even outside tombs, the instinct to hoard wealth as though it grants immortality endures. Billionaires accumulate more than they could ever spend in multiple lifetimes. Families guard inheritances as though legacy itself could grant eternity. Investors chase fortunes that will outlast their bodies, building empires that stretch beyond their years. But no matter how immense the hoard, the end arrives. The account is frozen. The property is sold. The empire is divided. Money changes hands, but never follows its possessor into the grave. Pause here and reflect on this. Every coin you hold, every note in your pocket, every digit in your account will one day belong to someone else. Not because you will choose to give it, but because life itself will take it from you. The psychological of denial. Why then do we cling so tightly to wealth, knowing it cannot follow us? Perhaps because money feels like control. In a world of uncertainty, money offers a sense of power over circumstance. With it, we can buy food, shelter, comfort. With more of it, we can delay sickness, extend health, build safety. And in this delay, this extension, lies the illusion that maybe, just maybe, money can outwit death itself. But money is only ever a delay, never a cure. At best, it buys more time. But time is always finite, always borrowed. And so the denial persists, a desperate grasp at permanence where none exists. The legacy illusion. Another way humans try to outwit mortality through money is by imagining legacy. If wealth cannot follow us, perhaps it can carry our name forward. A library bearing a patron's name, a hospital wing funded by a benefactor, a trust established for generations. These are noble acts, often generous. But they are also echoes of the same denial, that money can grant immortality through memory, through influence. And while it may stretch a name across centuries, it does not preserve the self. The donor is gone, the name a shadow, the wealth a tool now in others' hands. Money cannot grant eternity. It can only create ripples in time's river, ripples that eventually smooth back into stillness. The existential paradox. This final paradox cuts to the heart of human existence. If money cannot cross death, why do we spend so much of our brief lives chasing it? The answer is not simple. Partly, it is necessity. Money buys survival, safety, comfort. Partly, it is desire, the endless hunger for more, the hedonic treadmill spinning. And partly, it is fear. Fear of insignificance, fear of impermanence, fear of the final silence that no fortune can bribe. The paradox is cruel. Money gives life structure, yet loses all meaning when life ends. It is both everything and nothing, central and irrelevant, absolute and void. The philosophy of enough. Many traditions grapple with this paradox. Stoic philosophers reminded themselves daily of mortality, urging detachment from wealth. You cannot take it with you, they whispered, not in despair, but in liberation. If money cannot follow, why cling so fiercely? Why not live with enough and spend life on meaning rather than accumulation? Buddhist teachings echo this, pointing to impermanence as the root of wisdom. To grasp at wealth is to grasp at smoke. It slips away, leaving only suffering. True freedom lies in release, in seeing that the pursuit itself is illusion. Even in Christianity, the warning is clear. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy. The treasure that endures is not coin, but spirit. Across time and culture, the message is the same. Money ends before we do. The gentle weight of mortality. Imagine again your own life's end. Picture yourself surrounded not by wealth, but by silence. In that moment, what will matter? Will it be the size of the bank account, the digits on the screen, the stacks of paper? Or will it be something else, the faces of loved ones, the warmth of memories, the depth of presence you carried through your days? This reflection is not meant to frighten, but to soften, to remind us that while money can shape life, it does not define its meaning. Mortality strips away illusions, leaving only what is truly ours, the time we lived and how we lived it. Pause, breathe, let the thoughts settle like a stone dropped into still water. The paradox summarized. Money can buy nearly everything. It can buy food, shelter, comfort, power, influence. It can buy time, sometimes years of it through medicine and care. But it cannot buy the essence of time itself. It cannot buy a single second beyond the span already given. And so, the paradox is complete. Money is both omnipotent and powerless. It can transform the world, yet fails at the threshold of death. It is a ruler within life, but a beggar before mortality. Every paradox we have explored, the illusion of value, the persistence of scarcity, the strangeness of debt, the tangle of time and money, the pursuit of happiness, the danger of inflation, the chains of ownership, the myth of neutrality, the unreality of virtual wealth, each one bends back to this final truth. All the paradoxes of money dissolve in the face of mortality. For if money cannot follow us, then all its power is temporary, contingent, fragile. It is both everything and nothing. And perhaps this realization is not a curse, but a release. Perhaps to know that money ends is to know that life must be lived now, not postponed for a fortune that cannot accompany us. Perhaps the final paradox is also a final gift, to remind us to spend more time on what money cannot buy. Take a moment now to reflect on this. Let the thought sink into you like a slow tide. Every paradox of money leads back to the same truth. It is both everything and nothing. As you drift toward sleep, let these thoughts settle softly, like coins sinking into still water.